Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of A Look at Clockwork Empires. This is on the occasion of the release of Beta 55 to the stable branch. That was released just this Friday past, so 2 days ago. Now, I know what you're saying, normally I do these once a month, and I did my last Beta 54 videos like a couple of days ago. Well, that's because of the vagaries of the release schedule, I guess. Basically, the stable branch version of 54 was released around the middle of last month, and then I said I'm going to wait until 54B to start the playthrough. But then 54B came out like a week before this, and there were a whole bunch of changes. And then 54C came out even more recently, and here we are at 55. So practically speaking, the differences between 54C and 55 are relatively small, but I like to do a look at what's up with the stable branch release every time it comes out. So here we are. We get more Clockwork Empires than usual. So, for those of you not familiar, Clockwork Empires is a game in early access, and it's available on Steam, and you can buy it directly from the developers, etc., all the usual stuff. But because it's a game in development, it gets regular updates. So the devs have promised a big stable branch release monthly, and then experimental branch releases between those. So here we are at 55. Now a lot of what I have to say about 55 will be reminiscent of my 54C video, but I'm going to go into more depth in some of the supply side mechanics. First thing I'll point out, of course, is that the menu is no longer centered. As you can see here, it's now the left third of the screen. It used to be centered, and it was just like the Clockworkian flag in the background. Now, of course, it fades into some rotating banner art. So monthly, to accompany their sort of monthly blog posts, the devs always whip up some fancy new banner art. So that's been incorporated into the title screen now. This will rotate every time you load up the main menu. Normally I start these looks with a game running. I'm not going to do that because I need to show you the map. So here's the Embarcation map, and in Beta 54 it was this map with these location bubbles, but they were all unlocked, and a pane on the side allowing you to select your loadout. So that's changed slightly. You'll notice some of these biomes are locked, and some are unlocked. So the clear ones are available for you to select as your embarkation location, and the ones with red X's are obviously unavailable. So when you fire up a new game with no experience, not having played Clockwork Empires before, you'll only get these temperate biome bubbles here. With the it's a very faint illustration of grasslands. Once you've played a game where you reach 30 colonists, then these jungle biomes unlock. Then once you've played a game where you've hit 100 colonists, these Arctic biome, or these desert and Arctic biome locations will unlock, the more extreme locations. And they unlock in order of progressive difficulty. Also, you may notice, again, the embarkation loadout screen is gone, but loadouts themselves are not gone. So if I click on these, you can see the first line is always loadout, what you are getting as a loadout. There's no verbose description of what those loadouts are. They are, in fact, distinct. Standard is pretty well balanced for everything, whereas, for instance, the Wild I don't know actually what the Wild Naturalist is about. That might be a new one. Advanced Expedition starts you off with some second tier building materials, as I recall. And then the Industrious Crew, you start with a loadout geared toward rapid construction of production warehouses or workshops. I'm not sure that the ability to select loadouts is gone forever. The developers are still thinking about the way to implement that. So for now, they're tied to your starting location. I don't think it'll be that way forever. Right, so I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to cut to a game I have in progress, and then I can talk about some of the UI and stuff in-game. Okay, here we are at my colony in progress. So this is, I've had a few hours into this session. It's still a relatively small colony. I've only got 13 colonists. Oh, looks like some settlers have just made off with the fishman Gibbs. Well, anyway, as you can see, this is a very dense colony. I don't normally like to establish them quite so packed together. Among other things, because it makes it difficult to see what's on the ground, right? I can turn off the walls, I guess. There we go. But why is this colony so packed? Well, I built it in the swamp where there is a dearth of flat land. See this kind of flattish area? I had to flatten all of this manually. And everywhere else you can see this bumpy red terrain where I can't build anything until I flatten it first. Otherwise, I think the colony is doing okay. We've got a bit of a labor situation in that all my colonists are busy doing things. So if I were to expand or if I want more facilities, I need more immigration. And to do that, I need more housing, which means I have to flatten more land and build bricks and etc. etc. So anyway, that's not important. That's just where this colony is at now. This colony is not doing as well as it could be. I just came out of a... Everyone in the colony was very mad for a while because I didn't have enough military, and that affects everyone's personalities. Let me show you by clicking on the... Well, nobody's mad anymore. Now it's just the colony is consumed by despair. Let me pause here for a second. So this is the list of all the colonists in the colony. These big tabs are overseers, and these little tabs are common laborers. Here we have at a glance their whether or not they're busy, what they're doing, and also their moods. So if we mouse over some of their moods, for instance, we can see quite easily that despair is the predominant emotion here in town. And also I can see why are people unhappy? Well, they're not eating well. Now, nobody's starving. We have enough food, but it's not high quality food. So they're making do with this like low quality fungus stew when they would really like to be eating the more resource intensive, in this case, because I'm growing corn, the corn chowder or the sausages I'm able to make out of what little meat I'm able to scrounge from the wilderness. Anyway, so I like the UI, some of the changes to the UI in that I can see what are the major factors affecting many colonists. And we'll resume the simulation here. So, what are the big things to talk about in 55? Well, the very biggest thing, of course, is the removal of the upkeep mechanic. So, upkeep was a mechanic in previous revisions of this game whereby a workshop would incur sort of a recurring overhead cost. And that cost was determined by the number of modules there were in there. So if it was like a house, its upkeep would go up as you put in more and more cots. And same goes for the kitchen and the carpentry and all those other places. And it was not well received. You know, early access testers and comments on Steam forums and on the Gaslamp Games forums, people found it arbitrarily punitive, and it felt like it detracted from the game, right? That was removed, and in its place it was replaced by a different office supply system instead. So there's no more upkeep. You can build as many modules as you like. So this is the way office... to explain office supplies, of course, I'm going to have to explain what an office is versus a workshop. So let's take a look at this carpentry. This carpentry is considered a workshop because it contains, its purpose is to take in things, in this case wood, and process them into a variety of goods. And I will explain this bewildering variety of workbenches in a bit. But anyway, a workshop, by definition, according to the devs, is a building that takes in resources and produces goods. Offices, on the other hand, so like the foreign office or the labor, the barbershop, etc., they provide services, so they don't output goods. You get planks and furniture out of the carpentry. You do not get physical goods out of the foreign office, right? What you get out of the foreign office is an opportunity to influence diplomatic relations with the other countries and the bandits. It used to be that they required no inputs. You would just need people to staff the tables and stuff in there. So that's been changed. And now everything requires inputs, workshops and offices alike. The mine, interesting case, but the mine was considered an office because it required no inputs, but you got mined goods out of it. This is a mine here. However, and by the way, for those of you not familiar, this is the new mine interface. I will also touch on that in a second. But the mine is a good example. If we open up the mine interface here, we'll see there's now a resource that it needs to consume to mine goods, or to mine ores up out of the ground. It's this little box here that says mine shorings, of which it has 77. Each mining task or job that is completed in the mine consumes or requires a mine shoring. And mine shorings can be produced here in the carpentry. As you might expect, you make them out of wood, out of the assembly workbench here. Right, so what does this mean for the game in general? All offices now require inputs. Mines require trusses, and they'll consume them to give them a certain number of mine shorings. And when you run out of shorings, then you need to produce more. Labs require science materials. The academy, where I've never actually built one on screen. It's one of the newer offices. You send overseers there to train up skills. Anyway, the academy now needs paper. Paper is another thing, by the way, that can be made here at the carpentry. At this basic workbench here, you can turn planks into paper stacks. So paper is needed at the academy, also needed at the foreign office. The foreign office needs to consume paper to perform diplomacy jobs. The barber shop, where your colonists... Oh, we have an eldritch visitor. Well, I'm sure my inexperienced crew of militia will be able to take care of it. Let's let them fight as I continue talking to you about bureaucracy. So, the barbershop needs medical supplies to do its thing, i.e. healing people who are injured. And it can also use sulfur tonic to make that healing more effective. The naturalist office, formerly just the office where your explorers would hang out, so it has more functions now. Unfortunately, I haven't built one, so I can't really show it to you. But the naturalist office, you can send naturalists hunting to shoot at game for the colony. Surveying, in which they go exploring the dark unexplored areas of the map, and scouting, similar to surveying, slightly different. But the important thing to remember here is that the naturalist office now consumes resources. It consumes ammunition for hunting and paper for surveying. Scouting is apparently still free. So, also using ammunition, the barracks, which I'm not going to be able to identify it until I turn the walls back on. So this is the barracks. And again, I will talk about the new barracks interface in a second. But, like the other offices, the barracks now consumes ammunition. Which ammunition it consumes depends upon which firearm your soldiers are equipped with. And of course, which firearms they have available to them depend upon which firearms locker you have built and installed in there. So by default, all soldiers have a pistol. And actually, they don't require special ammunition. So the pistols are the worst gun, but at least you don't have to make ammunition for them, and everyone always has them. If you tech up to, say, this musket or whatever, one of these ceramic tri-pistols, they will use them, but they will fire them only insofar as they have ammunition available. Once they run out of that ammunition, they can no longer use their new fancy schmancy laden pistol or whatever, and will revert back to the default pistol. Yes, so that is the office supply system versus the old upkeep system. So general reaction seems to be that everyone is glad the upkeep system is gone and they're cautious. No one knows quite how to react to the office supply system yet. And even I don't have a really good idea how it affects the flow of the game yet. So we'll see. People are tentative on the office supply system. I'm sure we'll get a better idea of what everyone's opinions on the matter are shortly. So, other new thing I've already showed you, biome unlocking. That's I think that's just a safeguard for people who just ensure that people who are just getting into the game don't get themselves in an unwinnable situation. You know, someone with no experience with the game whatsoever tries to survive in the desert and maybe doesn't enjoy the game quite so much. So, the biome unlocking, guns and ammo I've already gone over. There are some new behaviors as well. So, as for colonist behaviors, they now have more extensive madness and enraged emotional states. So if things are bad in the colony, and someone is, well, let's take a look at Barston Shingler here, for instance. If I could click on him, so there we go. So here are his competing emotional states, and all of these are affected by his experiences during the day and his memories of events, and his predominant emotion here is sadness. If he gets so sad, or in this case, so fearful that it becomes his primary emotion, he may go mad. Or he may experience an extended fit of madness in which he stops working at his workshop, meaning, of course, it produces nothing, and he does something to alleviate that emotion. For extreme sadness, sometimes colonists will weep in the graveyard, or they will just sulk in bed and not do anything. Oh, that's the autosave firing off. For great anger, sometimes colonists will look for something to break or to kick, be that the precious goods in your stockpile, or they may wander off into the forest to try and kill an aurochs, which often goes badly for them. Yeah, those are more extensive emotional behaviors. Oh, Behendit wishes to join our colony. I will accept you, sir. The colonist, his name is Noble Robber. That's amusing. He's decided to join my colony. Oh, that's fine. Noble Robber, you get to work under Louise Brazen Thatch. There we go. She'll be your boss when you get here. Yeah. So that's, in a nutshell, that's those are the biggest revisions to 55. As to how it affects the pace of the game, again, I've only played this colony. I played 54 B and C, of course, which are quite similar to this one. The game requires really good sort of infrastructure and supply line support for the things you want to do now. Every task requires an input, right? And it typically comes down to furiously mining trees to produce paper or planks or logs or furniture. Basically a constant steady stream of inputs to expand. Often, if you're not concentrating on expanding, you'll be able to maintain your colony, keep it fed, keep everything balanced reasonably well. And I think the new UI plays a big part in that. Let's take a look at the UI. So here's the carpentry, for instance. So you'll note I have 3 different kinds of workbenches. This one workbench, which I've set to make a carpet, in fact, it's indicating to me that it cannot make a carpet because it does not require, I do not possess the requisite for bric-a-brac in this case, as you can see by the floating tooltip. So the game is indicating to me what exactly I'm missing and what I need to complete this job. That's handy at a glance. I can see which jobs. That's new. It used to be that things you couldn't complete would just sit in the queue forever, and you'd have no indication why. That's fine. I can leave this as a pending job because my other decor workbench is actually busy making bric-a-brac. And when that's complete, like I just completed my additional bric-a-brac, the carpet button becomes tan again, indicating someone will work on it on the next opportunity. So, what are these 3 different kinds of workbenches? And I'll speak specifically about the carpentry, but this extends to all workshops. Well, again, in the past, the carpentry just had these old basic workbenches, and you would use them to make everything. Your basic components, and also your finished goods, and your decor, and all that stuff. Now they only make this very limited selection of very basic things. The more complex furniture or building modules have been moved to the advanced workbench, which is actually made at the basic workbench. And the advanced workbench makes the functional modules, the things like beds for the houses and workshops, workbenches and things for the other modules. And I'm being raided by bandits, so let me get back to you. 2 bandits incoming. I think I have enough. Yeah, I've got 3 soldiers. I'm sure we can hold them off. defend the colony. Thank you, good sirs. Oh, he's stealing some of my is that flesh of some fishmen who invaded earlier? Yeah, we'll be fine. Right, back to the carpentry. So, again, the functional modules have been moved to the assembly workbench, and decor, things that improve the quality of a building. If we look at the carpentry workshop here, for instance, we can see the building quality indicator here in the bottom right. The more modules you have in a building, the lower its quality becomes because it sucks to work there. And people who work in a bad building become unhappy and dissatisfied, and their mood influences all sorts of things, right? We saw earlier how their personality can affect their behavior. If they work in a place that makes them unhappy, they will be unhappy, and being unhappy affects their productivity. However, the decor workbench, of which I have two, these two right here, they produce decor, as you might expect, which is to say bric-a-brac, the universal building component of all decor and all decor options. So putting decor in a building raises its quality, which offsets how terrible it is to work and live there. And if you have enough of it, it actually raises it up so people are happy to live and work in those places. Like this house here. It's got a whole bunch of cots, which would make it a terrible and crowded place to live, but I've started putting in carpets. This lighter one is one that I've ordered, but has not yet been installed. Right? Here's the boxed carpet here. As we can see here, the building quality is not -7, as one might expect from these cots, but instead -3. Because I'm getting a +2 bonus from each of these carpets, and when this one's complete, it'll only be a -1. And I'm probably going to continue installing decor in there, so it's, people are happy when they get to live in there. And happy workers are productive workers. So, what do the workshop changes mean for the game in general, or in at these other workshops? Well, first of all, various facets of production have been broken into different modules. And the same holds even though I haven't built them in the kitchen. There are different types of workbenches and different types of stoves for different tasks. What does this? Well, it makes for a cleaner UI, I guess. I'm not faced with this giant list of 30 things when I open up this workbench. It does mean that each workshop needs significantly more floor space to fit all the modules you'll eventually want to put in there, which in turn means they require more resources to build and they take more time, etc., etc. But it is easier to keep track of what module is doing what and the jobs you have queued. So time will tell if this is a positively received change, I guess. I mean, it does go back to the theme of everything you do has to be well supported by a good solid foundation of prerequisite things before it. What else was I going to say? Yes, and then on top of all of those, of course, there have been the usual swath of bug fixes and minor little changes that don't really merit their own headlines. Like at the pub, for instance, basic brew is gone. You no longer, well, I guess that's not the pub. At the kitchen, which brews your alcohol, it no longer makes basic brew. Instead, the individual recipes for different types of alcoholic drinks are back, which I appreciate, actually. I found I liked having better control over the types of booze my colony made, which is handy when you have multiple types of crops. Yeah, now you may notice as well, this is the maximum level of zoom out. It used to be, and the zoom in, the level of zooming in is still the same as usual. However, it's not possible to zoom any farther out than this. So this has changed just since the last revision, since 54C. The devs have said it's to enforce sort of a feeling of intimacy with your colonists. So I guess you have a closer eye on what's going on in the colony. The downside is, of course, it's harder to see your whole colony at a glance. I'm not sure how I feel about this. I kind of liked being able to zoom farther out and see everything. I guess we'll see. Again, I haven't had time to play with that feature extensively. So that's the game as it stands. Some pretty big changes since the last, certainly lots of big changes since the previous stable branch revision, which is 54, and even a number of pretty important revisions since 54C, which was like a week ago, or less than a week ago. What else am I not covering? Well, ammunition needs to be manufactured. That can be manufactured at a metalsmith, again, which is more elaborate because it's the sort of prerequisite tree has been expanded. Pardon me. Overall, I think the game is kind of showing what its final shape will be. There's still a lot of stuff to... stuff is still being added, and things are still in flux. And obviously, you can see many crucial systems are still in development. But we can see the game shaping into sort of like a methodical colony, like a serious colony simulation. Make sure things are done properly and well supported, and and I think I hope I've been able to show you sort of the pace of the game as well. It's deliberate. It's things that you do like half an hour ago may influence the choices you have, or your capacity for defending your colony or your trade goods, well down the line. So it rewards good decisions at every step of development. It's also becoming more of a patient person's game, though. I will say that having followed this game, in early access for like 2 years, there's no more of that frantic rush to get things built as soon as possible, which is what the game felt like when it first entered early access. But the game rewards you for knowing the systems and supporting, planning ahead. Have the facilities built ahead of time for the things you want to do, and make sure they all work together and you're not overextending your supply line. I don't know how much more I can say about it. This is revision 55. I intend to... So I do these once a month. And then after the first episode in which I talk about patch notes and things, I attempt to play through the game for a few episodes, and maybe people can see, the pace of the game and whether or not this is the sort of game they might enjoy playing. That's what I'll be doing in subsequent episodes. But for now, that's been my look at 55. If you're still awake, my name is Alfred. The game is Clockwork Empires. It's being developed by Canadian developers, Gaslamp Games. It is in early access, which means things are always changing. Things will be buggy and incomplete, and systems are subject to tweaking, and they love to hear your feedback, by the way. So if you have salient opinions about what you're liking or not liking, or suggestions, you can contact them on the Gaslamp Games forums, official forums, or on their Steam discussion groups. They're pretty active in both those places. That's where the game is at now. So thanks very much for listening to me blab on about Beta 55, and hopefully I will catch you in the next episode. Have a good one.